Hello friends, how are you doing all? I hope you're doing really staying healthy, enjoying life and must be planning to improve your life. Here we are to do so. Here daily we read a chapter of a novel to develop reading habit to improve our English, including reading, writing, speaking, vocabulary at the same time enhancing our knowledge. As we know, reading is the best practice to develop all these things, which help us in many ways. And reading could be one of the good hobby to make a change in ourselves. As we have heard from many prominent personalities that books change their life, add values, widen their knowledge, we can live other life by reading a book and get all this experience and learn from their mistake. So by to commit same mistake, if we can learn from them and improve our life. So join me in this journey to become best version of ourselves. Before starting, I would love to hear your thought in comment section. Remember to like, share with your loved one to change their life as well, and don't forget to subscribe my channel. Press the bell icon for daily updates. Today we are going to read 14 chapter, or you can say part 14 of this particular novel, that is Your Dreams Are Mine Now, which is written by Ravinder Singh. So let's read and see that what is there for us. I hope that you have watched the previous video in which we have talked about the 13th chapter, and we told that how that news spread about the professor, and everywhere that was the talk for on the news channel and Facebook and everywhere. So it was time to send him behind the wall. So today we are going to see that what happened next, and we will find more thing about that. So let's read and see what is there.
14. That day the first semester exams had got over. While Rupali believed that she had done fairly well in the rest of the subjects, it was statistics that hadn't gone as per her expectations. But that wasn't the reason behind her emotional state of mind that afternoon after writing her final test paper. Scores of auto rickshaws had lined up outside the campus and awaited their turn to drive inside the hostel. There was a constant stream of students coming out with their backpacks and rucksacks. Their faces radiated immense happiness. The joy of going back to their homes in the semester break was clearly visible on each and every face. Far away from the world of books and classes, celebrating Christmas and New Year's with the family was on everyone's mind. The entire university awaits the winter break, but no one more than the first year batch. While they were waiting for their ride, they briefly discussed how the last exam had gone. They also chatted about who was going where, by which train, and when they were planning to come back. Most of them were to travel in groups, while some had to go alone. As they bid goodbye to each other, the auto rickshaws drove them out of the hostel. But unfortunately, unlike others, Rupali was not going back to her hometown. The sudden news of a car accident in her extended paternal family had totally changed her vacation plans. The news of her relatives admitted in the ICU at a hospital in Kolkata had made her parents rush immediately to attend to the injured. They boarded the next available train. Tanmay too had left with them. With no immediate family members in Patna, it was meaningless for Rupali to go home. Moreover, with such short notice, there were no seats available in trains from Delhi to Kolkata. Rupali had no choice but to stay back in Delhi. Seeing of her batchmates and watching them leave the campus one by one had left her sad. Just like them, she too wanted the joy of going back to her hometown and spending the holidays with her family. She watched Saloni pack her bags too. Her family had planned a 2 week holiday in Australia. She was going to join them. For the sake of giving her roomie company for a little more time, she had asked her father to send the driver late in the evening. They chatted happily about the college and their friends as the two of them stepped out and walked towards the mess. And just like that, Rupali turned around to look at their hostel block. Unlike other evenings, now only a handful of rooms were lit against the dark evening sky. She sighed. She could actually count them on her fingers. But Saloni tried to sound happy. See, you are not alone. You have company, she said, trying to comfort her friend. Rupali didn't say anything. She checked if any of the rooms on her floor were lit. There were none. Inside the mess, the scene was similar. There was no one at the dinner table. Rupali picked up a tray and took some dal and a chapati. Saloni said she wasn't hungry. She said she would take a bite or two from Rupali's plate. She was going home as it is, and her family would be waiting to eat dinner with her. They sat at one corner of the table. Even though she had company, Rupali couldn't eat anything. How desolate the noisy mess had turned into. She kept thinking. Soon another group of girls came into the mess. Saloni identified that two of them were from the third year batch and played basketball with her. She spoke to them and also introduced her roomie. The girls were not going back home and were going to stay back at the hostel for the entire holidays. They said it was fun staying back. They planned to go out for movies and short trips to nearby places. That was comforting for Rupali. It didn't stop Saloni from asking her senior friends in the basketball team to look after her roommate in her absence. Everyone laughed at that. Rupali felt embarrassed. Saloni laughed too, but said she was serious. While they were talking, three more girls from the first year entered the mess. They were from the arts stream. Rupali didn't know their names, but recognized them by face. She was the first to ask them, "Not going home?" "No," they said as they shook their heads. Rupali was selfishly happy. She did not want to be by herself. All of them chatted on as they ate their dinner. Rupali felt somewhat happier that she wasn't going to be as alone as she would thought. Later, when Saloni's car arrived, she hugged her and said goodbye. They promised to be in touch. The next morning Rupali got up early. The unusual calmness in her hostel hadn't let her sleep for long. While she brushed her teeth at the wash basin, she heard a few voices. They weren't from her floor but perhaps a level or two above. When Rupali paid attention to them, she realized they were two maids at different floors talking loudly to each other while cleaning the washrooms. She realized that in her abandoned hostel the voices had now begun to echo. The dark galleries and the still walls of her barren corridors reminded her of being all alone on her floor. So she stepped out of her block and went to the lawn in front of her room. It was still early morning. The chill in the air made her pull her stole tightly around herself. She shivered slightly as she stepped out, but the cold breeze caressing her face felt good. Her cheeks turned red. She breathed deeply. It wasn't so bad being alone, and she was beginning to enjoy the quiet. It was all so peaceful. A pair of parrots landed on one end of the lawn. They were perched delicately on the thin branches of the hedge that ran along the periphery of the lawn. Then they began chirping and hopping around. Rupali watched them attentively. It felt nice to see them. Their chirping soothing, like melody to her ears. It was a change from the usual noise in the hostel. New, beautiful sounds replaced the hullabaloo of the hostel. She felt like taking off her slippers and walking. She removed one first and stepped on the grass. The dula then tiny strands of wet grass tickled her soul. She enjoyed that moment. She then took off her other slipper and placed that foot on the grass, too. She smiled when she felt a fresh tickling sensation. She walked around barefoot, happily exploring the pleasant damp earth underneath her feet and appreciating how beautiful that morning actually was. For a while, she forgot that she had not gone back home. The chirping of the birds caught her attention again. She turned to look at the two of them. She observed how they jumped from one branch to the other. At times they took a short flight to move to the other side of the hedge. And on some instances, they came looking for something to eat on the ground. Watching them pecking in the grass, Rupali became curious about what they were eating. She walked towards them to observe them from a closer distance. But unfortunately, the pair sensed a potential threat in Rupali. Even before Rupali could move closer, the pair flew away. Oh wait! Rupali shouted, her arms raised in their direction while her eyes followed them. She was sad to see them fly away. She shouldn't have disturbed them, she thought sadly. She then looked around to see if there were any more birds to give her company. She found none. And that's when her tulsi plant caught her eye. She walked towards it to see how much it had grown. She had been so caught up with her exams that she hadn't found any time to take care of it. It was the gardener who had been watering it and maintaining it along with other plants in the lawns. Rupali bent down and ran her fingers across the little branches. There were now tiny flowers on their tips. The strong fragrance of tulsi filled her nostrils and she inhaled deeply. Up! she exclaimed. Look how big you have grown, she said and kept caressing the plant as if it were a little puppy. She would read somewhere that plants too responded to human touch and grew stronger when they were talked to. She felt like it was only yesterday that she had planted it. It was only a little sapling back then. Her thoughts went to Arjun. It seemed like yesterday when she would first met Arjun at this very place for the first time. She wondered how her perception about him had completely changed. From a senior who she thought was a bully, she now felt that he was a caring person. They had seen a lot of each other and so much had happened in the past 6 months. She thought about Rahima and her life. How that poor lady had undergone such a miserable life for so long. She wondered how many Rahimas would have lived a similar horrible life, scared to speak up and dying a new death every day. Even though it had been a month since Mahajan was in the lockup, she still found it difficult to accept how the entire episode had unfolded and had such a favorable ending. She thought she had just got lucky that she had the evidence. But then, in her heart, she also knew that luck follows those who seldom include it in their plans. The sun was finally up in the east. It had already begun to form a patch of warmth in front of her. She sat on the slightly damp grass and stretched both her legs into the sun. She felt nice when the morning rays fell on her wet feet. Minute green, yellow and brown strands of grass along with dirt clung to the base of her feet. They filled in the gaps of her toes and soiled her soles. She sat back and relaxed. Life had been good so far. Later in the day, after she had her breakfast, Rupali went to visit a nearby Krishna temple. This was the temple she otherwise used to visit every Sunday. But today she would felt like visiting it again. It was better than sitting idle. She would ask a couple of friends if they wanted to go, but all had refused. So, she would start it on her own. The temple was hardly any distance from the hostel. As Rupali walked up the steps of the temple, she felt at peace but a little alone. I wish I'd not come alone, she thought. But just as she was about to take off her shoes, something pleasant happened. She saw a familiar face. He'd spotted her before she saw him and had stopped. She smiled. It was Arjun.